The Nuggets and the Spurs just played what I think might be the game of the year, certainly one of the 3 or 4 best games of the year. It was an MVP matchup that both players delivered on. So we're going to break down that game, a little surprise Sunday edition for you. We're also going to talk about players who were not the best player in the world at any given point, but are still historically great. We're also going to talk about the Lakers. I got to ask JT, is it all over? I think so. All that and more on today's All NBA. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllCity. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague from over at The Volume, Hoops Tonight. It's Jason Timpf. JT, I mean, part of it was just my game, or my team, Denver, the team I cover, the team I enjoy. Part of it was that. But this game, even on rewatch, I was like, every second of it was compelling. What a fantastic basketball game that was. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It's been a brutal few days for me as a basketball fan. Yeah. After I watched the Lakers get chopped off at the knees, I watched my Arizona Wildcats give just a truly putrid showing last night against Michigan. And Michigan was better, but not that much better. We just also played really poorly. So it was just brutal. But good thing I love basketball, because I did have a lot of fun yesterday in the afternoon watching that Nuggets Spurs game. I could have killed Carly, though, because I was having so much fun watching the game, and we were in our basement and she was getting ready to take a nap. And when the game went from the fourth quarter to overtime was when she went to sleep. So I couldn't yell and get excited as stuff was going down in overtime.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those ones where, if you love basketball, how could you not love that game? It had so many interesting performances on so many different levels. Obviously, Wemby and Jokic show out, each kind of in their own unique way. Jokic with the classic, hey, I'm actually the best player in the world kind of game, which I'm sure we'll get into. But there were so many other fascinating performances from Jamal Murray kind of struggling to De'Aaron Fox being way worse to Steph Castle having this monstrously impactful 20.5 rebound, 7 or 8 assist kind of game. Aaron Gordon with just it almost looked like he was kind of limping at various points in the game yesterday. And then he just dug deep and got every big stop down the stretch, to the super fascinating tactical battle that was taking place on both ends of the floor. It just had something for every basketball fan.
I agree, man. It wasn't, the big storyline delivered. MVP, Jokic versus Wemby, play the same position. It just feels like it's not that often that we get two great players whose skill sets complement each other for a matchup. Best defensive player in the league, best offensive player in the league, and they play the same position. It just doesn't feel like we always get that. And later on, we're going to talk about best in the world clashes, and you get a lot of LeBron versus Steph. You get guys that they're not really guarding each other. They're not doing this stuff. But when you get, as this game had, just going mano-a-mano down the stretch and a lot of one-on-one, it's rare. It kind of reminds you that, oh, my God, this could be a very fun rivalry for years to come. But let's get into the game, because I'm with you. There's some interesting stuff, and I'll start with the obvious one. The MVP conversation poisons everything. I get why it's fun. If you put it in your headline, you're going to have a big number on your shows. People want to talk about it. They enjoy this, even if they say they hate it. But for me, I analyze Jokic's season and say he's averaging a triple-double. He's doing all this great stuff. But I've watched Jokic for his entire career. I've seen every game he's played. This season was less impressive to me as overall than the previous 4 or 5 for one reason. It just felt like more often than not, he was in first or second gear. And even though he can be very successful in first or second gear, to me, it's hey, if we're just at the top, we're splitting hairs about who does something better. And I think that there's something to Jokic, part of it coming back from injury or whatever. But you don't want to confuse that for what does it look like when you pop it into fifth gear? What does it look like when you go all out? And Jokic in this game, it was so obvious from the start that he was going to go all out in this matchup. It was obvious Victor Wembanyama was. And it was in many ways a reminder game for Nikola Jokic that his top floor is just so high. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I have from the game is you watch that game and you're like, Jokic still has the ability to go against the best defender of a generation and render his defense more or less useless. overall. And that to me is what will stick with me from this game.
Yeah, I love the way you framed that discussion because obviously covering the league nationally the way I do with Hoops Tonight, I have every fan base complaining at me at various points in the year in various different ways, just like you deal with on this show with Legs and myself. And it's one of those things where every time I have some sort of conversation about a player that's nuanced, like here's the good, here's the bad, I always have the box score shoved in my face. And like, trust me, as someone who rooted for LeBron James for the last 23 years or however long it is he's been in the league, like when you're talking about the very best guys, the top tier guys, they always fill the box score.
Yep.
And I dealt with this with Luka Doncic fans for a long time where they're like, well, he was player of the month in January and this was what he averaged for the entire season before March. How dare you tell me that he was only good in March? I'm like, I'm not saying he was only good in March. I'm just saying this is clearly different than what it looked like before. And like, I actually used you as an example on my show when you had talked about Jokic. I'm like Jokic post his knee injury and at various points this season hasn't quite had that same level of impact that we know he's capable of.
And it didn't really show up in the numbers, to your point. That's the thing, is Jokic was averaging a triple-double coming back from injury. But when you watch it, there were defensive lapses, there was passive play, there were more turnovers. That's the one area it showed up.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like the numbers were that much different. A little less efficient, a little more turnovers. But when you watch it, you can feel and see the impact.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why, like, when we talk about the best player in the world, and I know we're going to talk about this further when we get later in the show in more of like a historical context, but like there's kind of multiple ways to frame that conversation. Like, who's playing the best basketball right now? Who's the best player in the world in the regular season context? That's very different from, okay, fate of the world on the balance. We're in a vacuum. Which basketball player do I want leading my team for the next 2 months? That's like a very different conversation. By the way, that's what the MVP is for. That's why we have the MVP, so that we can kind of have these discussions surrounding the regular season. And I'm okay with that because, like, I think it can get a little lame when we just automatically discount everything between October and April and just pretend it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, it's not as important as the playoffs, but like, we love NBA basketball. We got to find some value and joy in this chunk of the season, right? And so, yeah, like I do think Shea has been the best player this season. I do think that Luka might have been the best player post All-Star break. But there was not a point this season where if you actually told me, like, okay, Jason, you're a GM, all factors equal, pick a player to lead your team, that I wouldn't have taken Nikola Jokic. Yeah. There's just he is. I love the way you framed it in terms of the gears, because like just little things, 0 turnovers last night, just
locked in
mistakes. Even the misses, like he had a couple of misses around the rim that were just barely off. He had a 3 that he missed off the left wing that like barely grazed the front end of the rim and then the back of the rim and popped out. Like he was so locked in. And the defensive activity around the basket, he had 3 blocks. He had this play where he was guarding Julian Champagnie. We're going to talk about the tactics about this in a little bit, but he was guarding Julian Champagnie, and there was a pass to the wing, and he closed out, chased Julian Champagnie off the line, got beat to his left hand, recovered, and chased down, blocked him off the glass, like literally against a much faster player. It was almost like he was so keyed up for that game in a way where I still just think his fastball is so much faster than everyone else in the NBA's right now.
Yeah, it was a two-way game, which we're going to talk about here. That play obviously was huge. Here's what, just to set the stakes, I think, for both teams. The Spurs didn't necessarily need the game. They had this 1 seed that was within reach, and I think that they're probably were playing for that in some capacity. But I think even more than that, it was a measuring stick game for the Spurs. And they even talked about this as players in the locker room. Wemby, as he assessed the game, it was good for us. This is what we wanted. We wanted to kind of be in the situation, see how we responded. Now we can address it before the playoffs. A very mature sort of perspective to it. But it also reveals that that's what this game was. We want to go against that team and see how we fare against them in their building. And so that's what it was for them. For Denver, maybe even more important, because Denver does not have a lot of great wins under the record belt, especially since Jokic came back from injury. There haven't been a ton of chances. All the tough games Denver played were right when he came back. They had like a 3 or 4 week stretch where they were just playing nothing but good teams. And they lost, if you remember, similar to how they won last night, they lost a pair of games to the Thunder, last second shots. They lost a very close game to Detroit, very close game to New York. So they had all these games where you're like, they're right in them, but they're not getting over the hump. This was the last chance Denver would for sure have an opportunity to have one of these games. And I think they played and I think it's why we saw Jokic put it in fifth gear, this is the only chance we're going to get to know that we can play the way we need to play in the playoffs. And the fact that they checked it is very important. We'll talk about some of the injuries, but it was meaningful to them, and I think it should be meaningful to anybody analyzing them, that you watch that game and say, Spurs didn't do anything wrong. Denver just did a little bit more, and that's what, in the playoffs, it just comes down to whose best pitch, not average pitch, whose best pitch is best.
Yeah, and I love the way you talked about the clutch basketball, because that's the key there. That was an area that they had struggled this year on both ends of the floor. They had stretches where they weren't as good offensively down the stretch of the games as you would expect them to be from years past, and defensively. And yet this was that old school Denver Nuggets, what we've grown to expect from them, where they just methodically get every single shot they want down the stretch. And on the other end of the floor, they're able to find some scheme that works, some look that works, and their veteran players are able to kind of scale up their defensive impact to where they need to get stops. And so, what, like you mentioned earlier, like San Antonio is an awesome defense. They're 110 defensive rating. That's third best in the NBA. With Victor on the floor, it's like 103, which is like absolutely outrageous. With Jokic on the floor last night, the Nuggets literally put up a 136 offensive rating.
It's insane, man.
It is absolutely insane. And so it kind of came down to like what I thought was fascinating was they were able to generate shots last night in a variety of different ways. So first of all, Victor could not guard Jokic one-on-one.
Right.
Victor
it's a big deal.
On
it's a
him,
big deal.
He scored on him 6 times one-on-one yesterday. He forced 2 misses, one where he blocked him and Jokic got the ball back and scored.
Yep.
And then the other one was the little lefty hook that he left just a little bit long, which is a shot we know Jokic can make, but it was very good defense.
He did force it to a weird angle, though. I will say, even as Jokic shot that one, I thought, okay, he had to release it at a different angle than he typically does higher because of Wemby's length. So I'll give Wemby that one. He affected it.
Oh, Wemby was great. For the record, there was also a floater that Jokic missed in crunch time that he left a little short, that he shot a little higher than he normally would because Wemby just came flying over and helped. Yeah. So, Wemby's great. The point is Jokic was able to solve that puzzle, just find the timing for his release and the types of contact he needed to kind of generate the little bits of separation. But then also, the two-man game. The Spurs were rotating to Jokic on the pop. So when they put 2 on the ball and drop coverage against Jamal Murray coming off, Jokic could get the defense in rotation by catching at the top of the key and making the next pass in the chain. The switching, when they started switching, and this I think is especially important when we talk about Oklahoma City as well, because remember in Game 7, putting guards on Jokic was a big part of how they dominated Game 7. Jokic was able to actually create the passing angles that were necessary, and they were able to get the ball into Jokic, which then was forcing the defense to immediately collapse around him, swing. We were getting good, clean looks for Cam Johnson. Both of Cam Johnson's threes that he got at the end of the game were off of post-ups of guards where they were able to get the ball into Jokic. And so the key there is Denver was able to find 3 different kind of ways to enter San Antonio's defense. Yeah. And methodically down the stretch, they were getting to that every single time. On the other end of the floor, they were able to get the stops by putting Nikola Jokic on Julian Champagnie and Steph Castle, having him sag into the basket. Aaron Gordon did a really good job of trying not to get switched off of Wemby. He did a handful of times, but he did a really good job of trying to not concede the switch.
At the end of the game, not for most of the game, that wasn't the case, but at the end of the game, it was now we're going to just stick to him no matter what.
Exactly. He was refusing to switch. And the one time he did switch off of him was that play where he ended up it was late clock. And when De'Aaron Fox was coming off the dribble handoff, he's never, now that there's only 5 seconds on the shot clock, they don't have time. They don't have time to throw the ball into the post. I'm going to switch out onto Fox, and he gets a stop on De'Aaron Fox in space at the top of the floor. So Aaron Gordon, that defensive weapon, overall, the defensive rotations, there was a big one late where De'Aaron Fox got switched onto Jokic in a ball screen, and Jokic is sliding his feet like crazy, and De'Aaron Fox finally makes a move that breaks off Jokic, a little left to right crossover, pullback dribble, Cam Johnson, beautiful defensive rotation from the top, gets a last-minute contest. They rotate to the top. They force Julian Champagnie into a tough contested three. It's like there was that level of defensive execution from Denver down the stretch that matched their offensive execution. And frankly, they just got way better shots on both ends of the floor down the stretch. And it made me feel, as I was watching that game, like if Denver can keep things close with San Antonio in a series, they have a real half-court advantage. Now, San Antonio also demonstrated throughout the game that their perimeter athleticism can be a real problem. And they were able to push the lead to 10, 12 points at stretches, and that will be San Antonio's path. But like Denver looked like they had a good grip on like the puzzle down the stretch of that game, which is what we expect from that Denver Nuggets team.
I think equally as important, the end of game part of it was really interesting because Denver found a rhythm, to your point, where they knew how they were going to generate their shots. And some of this just was the greatness of Jokic. If they are going to single cover you with Wemby, he made a couple big time shots over him in the clutch that were like, hey, that's a tough option for you as well. And then some of the things they were able to just to generate rotation and get the team in rotation. Their best play of the entire like collective team play was the Cam Johnson top of the three that you're talking about, where you got Jokic into the basket. The guy from the corner dives, and so your weak side, who's trying to guard three people with two guys, they have a diver and two spacers, and so you just kind of have to pick your poison. Jokic never misses those. Like, he always knows exactly how to get it, make the extra pass, and find Cam Johnson. So Denver in the clutch, and by the way, you pointed it out, clutch has been an issue for Denver this year, but if you go deeper in the numbers, it's really about Aaron Gordon not being there. He's such a key piece of it. When he is there, they're pretty good, pretty clutch. Well, there you have one of the best defenses in the NBA, and Denver in the clutch just scored every single time. On the other end, San Antonio, I mentioned this on the DNVR show last night. There's a stat that keeps going around because they are winning. Like when they win games, they're up by an average of 18 points or something like that. I can't remember what the stat was. Where they get up a lot. It's very common for them to be up big against opponents. But one of the results of that is you don't get into clutch time a ton. You don't get a ton of reps against good teams like this. If you're in the clutch, usually it's a bad team you pull away at the end. I thought San Antonio had a bit of an identity crisis in the final 8 minutes or so of this game, where the ball slowed down a lot. I know Spurs fans are upset with De'Aaron Fox, but I feel like all of their guys were not sure exactly what their fingerprint was supposed to be on the offensive end. Wemby ISOs, I don't know if that's the best use of Wemby, to just put him there. I think he'll get to this point. De'Aaron Fox, you had the point about the one possession where I think he kind of took over when maybe he didn't need to. There was time to keep it moving. He turned it into an ISO. So that's the big difference to me, is Denver, who struggled all year in the clutch, knew exactly who they were and how they attack. And I thought San Antonio is going to look at that tape and say, are we sure we want to go to Wemby on the elbow 6 times in a 4-minute span? The answer is probably no, but it's interesting that they didn't know that in that game, at least before it happened.
Yeah, so that was my big takeaway from the San Antonio side of things, is like when you play Denver, you know what you're getting down the stretch offensively. Like, you're not going to dislodge Denver from the way they want to play offense down the stretch of a game. And I'd argue Oklahoma City kind of falls into the same boat there. Like, it's going to be Shea.
Yep.
They're going to put him on the wing.
Yep.
And they're going to put some sort of shooter or J-Dub slasher type on the opposite wing. They're going to put their best jump shooter in the corner immediately next to him. And they're going to go ISO. And if you pinch down or double, he's going to kick out to the wing. But he's going to, if you let him play on an island, he's going to get to that little 15-footer that he's literally hitting like damn near 60% of the time this year. There's like a sure-footedness to the way those teams play offense. That
Lakers, before the injuries, this was part of why they were so good in the clutches. It's not that complicated. You're not running a crazy offense. It's like Luka has the ball, everybody spaced properly, and we know what to do. Same with OKC. So you're right. And that's why the Spurs, who kind of play a pretty game, they have a lot of guys that drive and kick. At the end of the game, it was an ugly game. It was, hey, let's just treat this like we're the 96 Bulls and see if one guy can kind of go. And again, is that something that they just did poorly in this game, or do they not actually have that identity? Because the playoffs are going to come down to those moments. And is their identity as solid as the OKCs and maybe even the Denvers?
No, so you're absolutely – I think you're onto something here, because if you follow the way that second half went – let's zoom in on the fourth quarter specifically. Starting with the Valanciunas group, San Antonio runs the same play every single time down the floor for about like 7 straight minutes. And it was the Steph Castle, Victor Wembanyama ball screen, or the one of their guards with Wembanyama on the right wing. And then they had De'Aaron Fox kind of lift up above the break on the left wing. So they were keeping the left corner completely empty. And then they had that little exit screen for Julian Champagnie going out to the corner over and over and over again. So the idea is you have an empty corner on one side and you have an off-ball action in the opposite corner. So now Wemby's rolling and no one's tagging him, right? And when they were doing that, like Aaron Gordon let Wemby get behind him a couple times. There were lobs. Then Denver was like, we can't guard the roll. So because of the way that they're running this action, so let's switch it. That's when they started dumping the ball over the top to Wemby against Jamal Murray, and he was getting fouls and easy layups down there because all of that space was cleared up underneath the basket. But then Jokic came back in, and Denver went on a run right away. And the reason why was as Julian Champagnie was running that little exit screen out to the corner, Jokic was guarding him, and Jokic was like, go ahead. I'm just going to sit right here under the basket, and I'm going to play center field on this action so that you can't throw the ball into the post. And then either Aaron Gordon would refuse to allow the switch, and then Jokic would be there to help if the guard turned the corner. Or if they did get the switch, Jokic was there to help kind of like make it so that you couldn't just dump the ball into the post there. So all of a sudden, the only place that Wemby could catch the ball was the elbow. And they started either going directly to him on the elbow or going there out of action, right? So then from there, it was like, okay, we had Cam Johnson and Nikola Jokic, Cam Johnson and Aaron Gordon, both multiple possessions on Wemby where they just got up underneath him and they beat him to spots. He's not a kind of guy who's going to beat you with first step quickness against a perimeter player.
But he is a lot better at it right now than he was a year ago. And that is one thing that I'm just going to say. I'm curious how much further that goes. Is he limited by his body, or is it actually something that he has a good, like, first burst? I'm not going to say first step, but it's just the first movement is quicker than it is for most big guards, and he has long strides. So I think it is more challenging, maybe than you were giving it credit for. I think there's something that could build into something of an unstoppable first move. But to your point, Aaron Gordon's an elite defender, and he's quicker than Wemby is at this moment on those types of one-on-ones.
I actually agree with you. I think the play right at the end of regulation is a perfect example, because on the one before it, he kind of faded a little bit too much, and the jumper wasn't that far off, the jumper that he missed. It was just barely off to the right. And if Wemby gets to the point where he starts hitting those one dribble pull up 17-footers, everyone's screwed. Yeah. But like on the play right before the buzzer, he took an extra dribble and he got a little deeper, a little closer, and he was kind of behind the backboard, but he barely missed that shot. It was like inside the rim, just right, and kind of bounced out. And so to your point, like I do think that Wemby will solve that puzzle. This is more like within this year. But like within this year, if you have enough big physical defensive talent on the floor, which Denver does, if you look at their lineups, Cam Johnson showed he could do it yesterday. Aaron Gordon showed he could do it yesterday. Jamal Murray had one that was at the elbow where Wemby just ripped right past him and got a dunk. So Jamal Murray is actually a pretty big physical defender, so I think he's capable of winning some of those battles. But if you're going to be able to switch on to Wemby at the elbow and kind of keep him in front and make him take tough shots, then they have to play two-man game or three-man game, like double drag, something with their guards coming off of the play. And then it becomes this situation where it's like, okay, if it's Steph Castle, you just go under on everything. If it's De'Aaron Fox, he's a guy that just isn't as good as Jamal Murray at making those tough contested pull-up jump shots. Dylan Harper's a rookie. And so as I was watching that game, I was like, they just don't quite have that like rock solid perimeter ball handling that you need to go bar for bar with a team like Denver, to go bar for bar with a team like OKC. To be clear, that doesn't mean San Antonio can't win.
They have advantages elsewhere, yeah.
And again, like they were up 4 with less than a minute left. Like Devin Vassell gets that dunk, but what happened? Denver went right down, got a mismatch for Jokic. He drew a foul in the post. Then they go down there, they get a stop, they come right back down. That's the play that David Adelman drew up, that genius little cross screen from Aaron Gordon that drew the double team that got Aaron Gordon the dunk. So the point is like Denver's never out, even when they're down 6, even when they're down 4, because they're just going to get a great shot every time. So as long as they get 2-3 stops in a row, they can erase a deficit like that. That's the thing with Denver. That's why they walk everybody down. So again, San Antonio very well can win the championship, but if they lose, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like, Wemby elbow ISOs are giving us tough fadeaways. in any sort of two-man game that we run, we're loading up off of non-shooters. Keldon Johnson's not making anything. Steph Castle's not making anything. Now it's De'Aaron Fox tough pull-up jumpers versus Denver offense. Now it's De'Aaron Fox pull-up jumpers versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander pull-up jumpers. Right. It's just kind of like I do think if San Antonio ends up in close games, they're going to be in some trouble in the postseason when they get to the later rounds. Like
I think it's entirely possible because that's what separates at the end of games. I mean, it's a big deal. I haven't seen anybody talk about this, but I was lying in bed last night thinking about it. Yes, this is what I think about sometimes when I'm just like after a game like that and I'm processing it. Jokic, to me, one of the great things about him as a player is that the more he goes up against somebody, the better he gets against them. This has always been true. He solves players. He figures them out. Rudy Gobert's a great example of this. Rudy Gobert, part of why I think his people don't think of him as this great defensive player and this part of it is because Jokic has killed his perfect defense. Like Gobert does everything right. Jokic just knows the angles around him and has had some high-profile games against him. Anthony Davis is like an all-time defender, but when there's one guy that just figures you out, and you could track their career and say, okay, at a certain point, Jokic just only had good games against those guys. I don't know if that's going to be the case with Wemby because Wemby is also young and ascending, but I think Wemby also figures players out just on the defensive end. I think Wemby kind of grows in the more experience he gets. So I haven't heard anybody ask this question, and I don't know what the answer is. We're all going to watch it play out in real time. But who benefits more from more reps against each other? Jokic figuring out Wemby, Wemby figuring out Jokic.
So I'm going to give you a two-part answer. I know this is a cop-out, but just bear with me. In isolation defense, I do think more reps benefits Wemby. You could kind of see that a little bit last night, or I keep saying last night, yesterday in the afternoon, because the post-ups in the first half, Jokic got great looks, but then he did get blocked once. And then the two post-ups in the second half, he did miss the lefty hook. Yeah, Jokic made his Sombor Shuffle, but that is such a tough shot.
He had another one on him, though. It was and this is one of the things I was wondering as I see Jokic trying to try different things. He had a 10-foot catch face up, and instead of backing down and trying to get something, it was face up, go drive, bump, kind of a hip bump. And then he pivots early. It looked like he's going to keep going and kind of follow it, forward into a hook shot. And it's almost like he stopped and shot a hook shot right over him. It looked like Wemby just didn't jump for it. And I remember watching that one going, okay, that was something Jokic's trying. He's trying something out and he goes, okay, he thinks I'm going to continue the drive. And if I stop early and get it up, he's off balance.
He can find a gap there. Yeah, no, I'm not going to sit here and say oh, Wemby is going to solve Jokic and all of a sudden he can't score on him. But I just think specifically with isolation defense, it's something that I think Wemby I think Wemby in general is a poor technique defender. He is pure talent right now. That's the scary thing for a lot. Even in his perimeter switches, he always overplays the three-point shot for some reason. He's actually been pretty bad in ISO defense, less against guys like Jokic, more against perimeter players this year because he just goes for every pump fake and then you could just drive right past him and get a layup. But Wemby will improve as a technique defender over time as he gets more reps. Where the two-part answer is, I think more reps benefits Denver and Jokic overall attacking San Antonio's defense because there's just a certain amount of you could did you see before the final play, Jokic went up, both Jokic and Adelman went up to Gordon and they were talking to him a ton.
Yeah, I did see this coming out of a timeout.
They knew that was going to happen.
They knew exactly how it would work. And part of this is psychology, I think. Wemby is young, and I'm not even blaming him for it. I think there was a sense of Wemby's not going to let the switch happen against Jokic. He's just not going to let this game come down to Jokic hitting a basket at the end. And so it's look, they're going to double me. Guaranteed. Lock it in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just think in general, as you look at it, the sequencing too, one of the things that San Antonio was consistently doing in that game was every single time Jokic got a switch on a guard, San Antonio tried to front. And you could just tell Denver is so advanced in the way they attack every single type of defensive coverage. In the first half, there was a play where they fronted Jokic in the post on the right block, and immediately when it happened, they bracketed, right? So this is what Miami does all the time to front the post. They send somebody in front, and then they bring Bam Adebayo over behind. So they always have hey, yeah, you can throw it over the top, but guess what? It's probably going to be a turnover. San Antonio does the exact same thing. They'll front the post, and then they'll bring Wemby in behind so you can't actually throw the ball into Jokic there. In the first half, Aaron Gordon immediately sniffed it out, flashed right up to the elbow.
I know the play. Yep.
And got the
Fade
ball.
away.
And I think, and hit the little fadeaway jump shot. Like in the one that led to the Cam Johnson, 30-footer at the top of the key. What Jokic did different is he kind of lifted. I think it was Steph Castle, if I remember correctly. It was either him or Vassell, but he lifted and kind of backed him, reverse posted him, away from the basket, so that instead of having to throw a lob pass over the top that Wemby could get to, it was a bounce pass into the gap, swing to the corner, up to the top to Cam Johnson. By the way, I was so happy for Cam Johnson yesterday.
Big time shots.
He's had some good moments this year. He's had some big games. That to me felt like his first real Denver Nuggets moment.
I think it's his second. I think he had one a couple games back where he hit. It was less than this one, but where he hit a shot that was sort of a last 2-minute shot. And I remember the player in that one, okay, thank God he got a moment like that. You kind of all need one. Last night he had 2 though in the final little bit. It's okay, he's starting to stack them now. He had
the and 1-3. He had the big 3 at the top of the key. That was a confident shot too. He stepped into it. He jumped forward. He stuck the landing like a superhero. He had a huge play towards the end of the game where Dylan Harper, mid fourth quarter, Dylan Harper was attacking him in ISO, and Dylan hit a super tough little fadeaway jump shot. We talked about Dylan on Friday. He's incredible. That kid's going to be a star.
Yeah.
But he very next possession, Dylan went right at Cam again, and Cam stonewalled him and stripped him.
It was
got the ball, attacked in transition, and had a contact transition traffic layup at the basket. He had some good individual defense on Wemby as well. Awesome Cam Johnson moment. But overall, again, to your point, I do think over time, Denver is just so good just at solving defensive puzzles as a team, as a unit, that I think it benefits them, especially against an inexperienced team like San Antonio.
Well, it reminds me, and I'm just curious what other people think of this. I think it's a very interesting question, just the idea of, is Jokic going to figure Wemby out over time? Is Wemby going to figure Jokic out? I think people will lean towards Wemby because he's ascending as a player. He's going to add things to his skill set. But it really is a defining trait of Jokic that he just kind of learns. If you're holding out hope for Denver against an Oklahoma City, I do think this is a part of what you're thinking is, well, they had a 7-game series last year. There's 7 games where Jokic kind of understands exactly what you're doing. And if you remember that series, Jokic was coaching a lot in the final games of it.
Yeah.
He's calling things out. And it's yes, I know exactly what they're doing. I don't know if we can stop it, but I know what to do. And it is a skill. It reminds me of Greg Maddux. If you've ever seen the cool documentaries where hitters and pitchers will go back and forth talking about the sequence. And it reminds me of that, where it's less this guy owned that guy, this hitter owned that pitcher, or vice versa, and more owned him this time. And now I go into the next one with okay, I know what he thinks he figured out about me, so I'm going to do something different. And I think there's a chance that we get this from Wemby and Jokic, where it's whoever loses, it's their turn to sort of do something new and adjust and take it to the next guy, and then it's that guy's turn to adjust. I think there's a potential for that.
Well, remember last year there was a game that San Antonio won, I think in Denver, where Wemby blocked Jokic on the Sombor Shuffle late in the game. So it's always that's first of all, this is the best thing about basketball. I always talk about this with Carly. If I have a bad day at the gym for whatever reason, you live to fight another day. It's but I can play again tomorrow. That's the best thing. San Antonio's is going to have a chance even before the end of the regular season to play these guys again.
Yeah, I love it. And usually we don't get this because I think a player just passes another one and there's no answer. And maybe that happens here. Maybe one of these guys just passes the other. But I do think there's a chance that they're both great in opposite directions, and we just get a counter punch back and forth for the next 5 years, which would be an awesome arc for the NBA to have over this next bit. There's more, though. We got to take a break, though, because we're halfway through the show. But we got to take a break. But there's more to this game, and I want to ask another tough question, which is Aaron Gordon essential to Nikola Jokic? Obviously, he is to this team. But there's a question of actually if Jokic has a fatal flaw that only Aaron Gordon, maybe one or two other players can cover. I want to ask that question on the other side. Reset time. Upgrade your everyday essentials with fewer pieces, better materials. This time of year always makes me rethink what's in my closet. I'm trying to keep fewer things, but better ones. Pieces that are well made and easy to wear all the time. That's why I keep coming back to Quince, the fabric that feels elevated. The fits are thoughtful and the pricing actually makes sense. Quince makes high-quality everyday essentials using premium materials like 100% European linen and their insanely soft flow-knit activewear fabric. Their men's linen pants and shirts are lightweight, breathable, and comfortable. Basically, the perfect layer for spring. The pants strike the right balance between laid-back and refined, so you look put together without trying too hard. If you haven't been to their website, there are hundreds of things to choose from for your spring wardrobe. They've got pants, they've got chinos, they've got shirts, button-downs, socks and underwear. They have everything. If you haven't checked it out, it's incredible. And the best part is their prices are 50 to 60% less than similar brands. How? Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. Everything is designed to last and makes getting dressed easy. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/allNBA for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/allNBA. You'll get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/allcity. I also want to tell you guys about Underdog. The tournament is back. Well, the tournament is back for one more day. Upsets are inevitable, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all of the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like points, rebounds, steals, and more. You get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. I always put together a little group here. I'm going to go with the Rockets and the Warriors tonight. Steph Curry is back in action. I didn't go with him. I'm going to go Kevin Durant, 24.5 points. Higher. Alperen Şengün, 0.5 three-pointers. The Warriors are good at forcing bigs to step out and take threes. I think he gets one higher. Kristaps Porzingis, 17.5 points. I'll go higher on that one as well. I think he'll just pick and pop a little bit and get to that foul line jumper. Download the app today and use the promo code ALLNBA to score $50 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code ALLNBA. Underdog. Make picks. Win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-MY-RESET or 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org in Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right, back here, segment 2, me and Jason Timpf, and we're going extra deep dive on this game because it deserved it. It was unbelievable. We don't know what the Jokic-Murray duo looks like without Aaron Gordon. We do know that when he's hurt, they're not nearly as good. And I'll give you some numbers here. Jokic and Murray on with Aaron Gordon off this year is a plus 8.8 net rating. Clearly good. Obviously, they clearly can make something happen. The question is, he is such an elite role player. He's my favorite type of role player because he's capable of doing more than he does for this team. Like, he could be a mediocre to bad go-to post-up guy and just shoot a bunch of shots and do some different things, post up a little bit more. Instead, he's molded himself into the perfect piece. And when all three are together, they're plus 19.5 on the season, which is just like, okay, that trio can win a championship no matter who you put around him. He guards players like Wemby. At the end of the game, he also guarded Fox, completely different type of player, to a completely different skill set, did a great job at both of them. He's a passer, and as you've pointed out on this show and has been pointed out a lot, along the baseline, flat spacing is what is best for the Jokic-Murray two-man game. They get the whole upper half of the court to operate because you have shooters in the corner, and Aaron Gordon, who has the same gravity on the baseline, because if you help off of him, it's a dunk or an offensive rebound. He might be like an essential piece. We'll never probably know, but I'm not even sure what Denver would look like around Murray, Jokic, but not AG. All we've ever seen is this version of them. Is there another way they could even play without him?
So I absolutely think he's essential. And I also think that that's kind of true for every all-time NBA great, like even when we look at LeBron, I think in his late career, he had refined enough as an offensive player that he didn't need a Kyrie anymore, but he had declined as a defensive player to the point where he needed an Anthony Davis at that point in time, right? But like early in his career, he needed a Dwayne Wade or a Kyrie Irving to essentially handle some of the super surgical half-court stuff, or Kobe Bryant needed an elite.
But those guys are
superstars.
Like, this is the one difference is I do think that you need another star. Jamal Murray is that to Jokic. He's the other star. And I think you could easily argue that there would be a different player if you swapped James Harden and Jamal Murray, prime James Harden or this or that. I think you can get the same effect. Aaron Gordon is more of a high value role player that completes it. And it's like his skill set is unique. He's so huge, 6'9", big bodied, but he's so versatile and can guard a bunch of different players. So to me, it's not a comparison to Wade or Anthony Davis. It's more a comparison to the next guy.
Maybe it has to do more with the fact that, like, so if you ask me, like, Jason, who are the two best offensive players of all time, I would say Jokic and Steph. And Draymond, I think, qualifies more as a role player than as a star, but I think he is similarly vital to the success that Steph Curry has had. So, like, I think to the point you're making, like, a super, super valuable role player kind of seems to matter more towards this unstoppable offensive engine type of star. Whereas, like, the more versatile, super athletic superstars in NBA history, maybe it looks a little different. But I think, we talked, you laid it out perfectly. I think above and beyond the baseline spacing, I think when you're a center like Jokic, and it's not to say that Jokic can't run ball screen coverage, because Jokic has run a lot of ball screen coverage in his career and has done so in a championship context too. But I actually think the type of defender that Aaron Gordon is kind of reminds me of what Jason Tatum did for the 2024 Celtics, which is when you have a power forward that is capable of being anything you need to be on defense, including guarding the opposing center and being able to switch ball screens. So he can guard the center one-on-one, keep the center off the glass one-on-one, but also switch onto a perimeter ball handler. But also, if Jokic is in ball screen coverage, he's your second layer of rim protection. Like, Jokic has run a variation of two different drop coverages in his NBA career. A high drop where he comes up to the level, and then a deeper drop where he hangs back. In the high drop where Jokic is being super active with his hands, the ball or the roll man does get behind him sometimes. And you need a very strong, vertical, excellent defensive rebounding power forward to be that next layer in the defense when Jokic is going out to the level. And so, like, in a lot of ways, I think Jokic is very underrated as a defender, as he showed yesterday once again. But in order to reach championship level defense, he needed to have a very big, very athletic, very versatile four-man to reach that level defensively. And I think that is essentially what Aaron Gordon has represented for this team.
But even the offensive end, there's just something different about, like, okay, and ideally if you lost Aaron Gordon, well, let's put a shooter out there then. Like, we're not going to lose some size, but let's put a shooter. There's just something diminishing about having three shooters, because now you have two along the perimeter and one up high. It still closes the gap from where you can help off of the Murray-Jokic two-man game up top. You can get a guy that rotates over to the elbow and stunts on it and just shrinks the court for them to operate. So it's AG on offense and defense. It's both of those things. And the reason I ask it is twofold. One, the future of Denver. AG is a little bit older, and this is 2 years in a row he struggled with health. I just don't think there's a world where you look at that and say, we're not sure. We need more of a sure thing. It's like there is no other sure thing. There's Giannis. You can go get Giannis. But outside of that, I don't think there's another guy that can do what he does. So even if you wanted to, like, try to move on and build a different team, I think you would have to really question whether that's even possible. And then number two is, as great as this game was, and so I saw people in the chat saying, is Adam back in on Denver? Is he buying Denver? Here's why I think it's difficult. AG felt like he left it all out on the floor last night, which is great because, you want to see that. But at the same time, there's 4 games left before the playoffs for Denver. And if you make it through, you're going 4 rounds, potentially 28 games, you're going to win a championship. Aaron Gordon looked like he had maybe one more game like that in him. Like, how much more? He's limping around halfway through the game. He's limping the way Luka was before, tearing his hamstring. He was limping around, and I'm just watching AG, and I'm like, this is awesome. I believe in the Nuggets fully healthy, but that didn't look like a guy that was about ready to go 2.5 months playing 40 minutes a night, really high-level basketball night in and night out.
Getting through this game, though, I think you can manage his minutes a little better down the tail end of the season. And the first round does have a more spaced out schedule. So, like, I'm not discounting your point. I'm just saying, like you guys have just gotten out of the hardest part of your schedule the things do get a little lighter in terms of the actual like travel and game density type of stuff as you move through this phase. But yeah, I 100% agree. And then the offensive end, it's even deeper than the vertical spacing stuff. Like Aaron Gordon has just become an extremely well-rounded offensive player.
Smart,
he's super smart. Like that's the thing. Like when you talk about replacing him, the initial kind of thought process is like, well, you just need another big forward, and it's like, well, Zeke Nachi's a big forward. Like you've got other big forwards. It's right. So much about the versatility piece. Like I've even talked about this with the difference between like, you know, Yaxel Lendenborg and like Rui Hachimura. It's like what excites me about a guy like Yaxel is like he's much more intelligent as a defensive player, much more active as a defensive player, much better read and react player. Yaxel's not realistic for Denver because he's probably going to end up going in the top 12, top 13. But like he's the kind of guy that fits the mold where it's like Rui Hachimura is sculpted like a Greek god, excellent athlete, just nails on wide open jump shots, has the ability to be a vertical space around the basket. He used to more so in the Darvin Ham construct where he was working as a baseline cutter more. But like he just was nowhere near intelligent enough on either end of the floor. He couldn't track players on the perimeter at all. Terrible defensive rebounder, like legitimately terrible defensive rebounder. If you chased him off the 3-point line, he had almost no offensive value. Like Aaron Gordon, to your point, represents an extremely rare archetype of player. It's just hard to find a guy who can do the things that he does.
Yeah. And replacements, I just don't think, like, you can go through the list, and I don't think there are that many guys out there. Julius Randle, different mold, similar, like, he's a skilled guy, but it's different. You know, you're not going to get the same things out of it. Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, like, there's a handful of guys that are interesting in part, but they're not the exact replica of Aaron Gordon. It's interesting.
He's the Andre Iguodala of this team for the next phase, meaning like you are.
It's a great
I don't care if you see him 32 times a year. Like you just from this point forward, he's always on the roster, and you just somehow get him to mid-April. Yeah. Like that's got to be the approach.
Two more things for you real quick. One, Stephon Castle's ability to not get screened really changes this series or potential series for Jamal Murray. I mean, Denver couldn't screen him, and they run the two-man game as well as anyone. They've done it a million times. Oklahoma City has this as well with Dort, Case, and Wallace. Like, they're really good at not getting screened, so it's hard for Denver to get into their first. The first step of the two-man game is pick and roll, get them moving, make the right play. Stephon Castle did such an unbelievable job of just not getting screened yesterday that I look at that and I go, I think Jamal Murray will have a good game or two in a series if they were to play. But I think there's going to be as many games where Stephon Castle just doesn't get any separation from Jamal, and Jamal ends up having to be an afterthought a little bit in the offense.
Yeah, I think to your point, the approach, and we actually did see this down the stretch a little bit, but like they used him and the lock and trail that Steph Castle was in to get those pops for Jokic, which another thing that we didn't talk about with Aaron Gordon is like the pick and pop rotation that San Antonio was throwing is so much longer when you have the entire top half of the court cleared. Whereas if you have somebody on the opposite wing, it's like a 15-foot rotation. It's a much shorter rotation. It's another big part of what makes Aaron Gordon so valuable. But I really do think that this is going to be a series where Jamal is functioning as a screener a lot. Yeah, because that's where you put Steph Castle in a much more different decision-making tree if he's now the helper on the other side of the screen.
But even late, the Spurs did a great job, and part of this is Wemby's length. When you do that inverted pick and roll, one of the goals is to get the switch, force a switch there. But they did a great job of not allowing the switch while still staying close to Jamal Murray, and it's because Wemby can basically cover Murray and Jokic both for a second, you know, just to hold the spot till you fight through. So very interesting matchup.
But they could do it with other players. They could, like to your point, just trying to problem solve here. Yeah. You could early in possessions have like Aaron Gordon bring the ball up the floor, have Jamal set a screen for him, try to get Aaron Gordon going. Then you either get the switch or Aaron Gordon's downhill, which is starting the possession. But they're going to have, to your point, it's a problem that Denver's going to have to solve.
Last one I have for you here. Jokic having a go-to shot that he can go to, like the Sombor Shuffle. It's underrated.
Did you see the highlight reel?
It's underrated. Not all of those were Sombors. Some of them are not true Sombor. Sombor would be a right foot, right hand.
He was skinny in some of those too. I was like, I've been doing this for a long time.
It is funny. But it's underrated in my opinion that he has a signature shot that nobody else shoots. Like for a while there, Şengün looked like he was going to try to take it. There's been a few in like college I've seen, so I'm curious if it filters through in the coming years. But it really does work when you're like, I'm just in a pinch and I need to be able to get a shot off against a 7'4" guy. Like, is there a shot that's even created? Just think about it. If Jokic didn't invent that shot, I don't know what his shot would be in those moments. And yet we remember high profile ones against Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, now Victor Wembanyama, where it's last possession of the game, I just have to be able to get something off. Do I have a shot
against
that's
OKC
reliable?
too.
What's that?
The one at the end of the game 5 against OKC too. Remember?
Denver, I thought was going to win. That's the only time in that whole series I thought they were going to win. He shoots that to tie the game in 90 seconds in game 5. And I'm like, maybe it's destiny. I don't know. They lost that game though. But yes, to have a shot like that, I mean, the only other ones I could think of, James Harden invented the step back in the modern way, that like where you take like 8 steps, but it counts on technicality issues. I'm not making fun of him. I'm just saying it's a shot that he invented that you can get off at almost any single time. Dirk has his shot, the one leg fall away, which is sort of like that. You get it off almost any time. Kareem has the sky hook. Who else has a shot that is, it's not like if I do it right, I will get it off. It's this shot I can always get off. And I've gotten good enough at it that it's reliable for me.
I would say the Kevin Durant hesitation pull-up 3. Like
yeah, it's tough.
When he takes it from about 25 feet, because the only thing you can really do, and Kawhi famously used to do this to him, is you can just attack the dribble, like attack the handle, but then KD can drive right past you, which creates a whole other different kind of problem.
It has to have a counter, yeah. Although the Sombor doesn't. The Sombor doesn't have a counter. It's like he's fully committed to it once he goes.
He's committed. Yeah, but I couldn't get enough of the slow-mo of that shot. And one of the things that I think is particularly cool about it is like it looks like this crazy off-balance type of shot. But if you look at it right at the end, like right when he's shooting it, if you freeze frame, he's squared up.
Yep.
His arm is right there in the shooting pocket. It is a perfect like inline release. It comes off the fingertips perfectly. Like it is a extremely skilled shot from him. It is not a prayer.
Nobody, and I'm just so curious of this because I'm somebody that like loves the evolution of the game, and when somebody unlocks something, I'm like, okay, you've unlocked a secret to basketball. Everyone now needs to learn the secret. And his secret, I'm not saying you have to shoot the Sombor because the Sombor is an extreme version of this, but he has perfected the right foot, right hand. And if you just think about like how many new finishes, the Euro step and the high gather or the low gather, you see Tyrese Maxey shoot the floater a lot, right hand, right foot, and then everybody copies it. Nobody copies the fact that Jokic, like, how did they win the game at the very end when the Spurs were not going to foul for some reason, which I thought was weird? Jokic goes to his floater, but not just any floater, right foot, right hand floater. And nobody else practiced this. And I just wonder if it's a thing where if you're 16 years old right now and you're a blue chip prospect, maybe try the right hand, right foot floater, because it seems to be an off rhythm thing that just works all the time. And it clearly can be perfected.
He hit like 4 or 5 floaters in that game where I was like, oh my God, the touch. Like, because remember the first shot he missed in the game was the one he got blocked. Like he was just nails on his short range shot making to start that game. That was
Have you ever tried it? Have you ever tried a right hand floater? Not a Sombor. Sombor's more of a fall away, right hand, right foot. But just like if you think about driving down the middle of the court and there's a defender there, you're always left hand, right, or left foot, right hand.
You're right. The problem for me is like because I play just men's league pickup basketball now, I'm bigger and more athletic than basically.
Yeah, so you'll never go to the floater anyway.
So I literally never go to the floater. I'm just trying to go through you or around you. But like I do remember when I was back in Tucson, there was a dude, blanking on his name now, but he had played in the G League for a while and he was 6'11", and they would just park him at the basket, and I like had to work on floaters because I couldn't like finish over him. But like it's a shot that like I just, because I'm an amateur basketball player.
It's more needed at the top level. You're right. It's very rare to run into the need for a
who did he shoot
floater.
that last one over, Adam?
Victor Wembanyama. You don't have a men's league Victor Wembanyama you have to shoot over?
Not quite. Not quite.
Well, let's wrap up, though, by talking about these other storylines we have. First one, Lakers injuries. This might be a quick answer, but the Lakers, a week ago, things were great. They were the hottest team. You're talking about maybe they're even title contenders. You stopped short of that, but you were excited. Since then, Luke is out. He's going to be out for, it sounds like, the first round, or at least in question at the very least. And even if you're coming back, I mean, even if you're saying he's back early, it's just hamstrings are not one of those ones where it's like he's healed. He's just now fully. The best you're hoping for is that Luka comes back surprisingly early, which at this point would be the playoffs at best, and is 50% of himself. But then you also lose Austin Reeves. And the same story applies. Even if he beats whatever timeline is given, you're still talking about a guy that's 50% of himself. It sucks for the Lakers to struggle through a tough year, come together in the last month and a half, and then it all gets taken away at the end. But to me, that's my assessment of this. Is yours that they are cooked as well now. And even in a matchup against the Wolves, I would look at that and say they're just not healthy enough to compete.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to plummet in the standings. Best
Are they?
case is that, yeah, I think so. I mean, Adam, the problem is with LeBron and Austin, they could at least stagger in a way to where they had enough ball handling on the floor. Marcus Smart is hurt. If he's healthy, he's your second best ball handler. This is no exaggeration. Even if Marcus Smart is healthy, Bronny James is their third best ball handler.
Oh, wow.
Behind LeBron and Marcus Smart. So like they're gonna lose to OKC again. Even I haven't. We're recording this at the time of the Dallas game. Like that's gonna be a tough game. Like it's gonna be tough for the Lakers to generate any shots when LeBron's off the floor. They play Phoenix. Phoenix is probably a loss. Like they're just going to be picking them up full court and just wearing them out. Like they could slip in the standings. They're going to slip to 4. They could slip as low as 5 or 6, depending on what happens with Houston and Minnesota down the stretch. In a first round series, I mean, like I would have given them an upset shot with a healthy Austin versus Houston. I think they would have been doomed against Minnesota no matter what because of their ability to switch with Gobert. But at least you could have been like, okay, they can target Şengün, they could target Reed Shepherd, maybe they can pick on those guys, and LeBron and Austin just have a ton of continuity from playing together forever. But it's basically over, and it's really unfortunate. And this is the last thing I'll say about it, Adam. I'm not blaming JJ Redick, certainly not for playing him in the second half. Like I thought that was ridiculous. Like Luka was favoring his leg in like 40 different games this year. So like if you're saying like, oh, why did he play him when he was favoring his leg? For the same reason he did in every other game that he was favoring his leg this season. The part where I think it gets a little complicated is like, you know how you were talking about, you remember Denver's schedule, Denver's insane schedule, right? The Lakers had 17 games in March. That was a brutal schedule for them too. There were 2 NBA players who played more minutes than Austin and Luka in March. Amen Thompson, who's probably the best athlete in the entire NBA.
Yep.
And Tyrese Maxey, who only played in 6 games because he sat out half the schedule. So, like, there was a minute load on Luka and Austin that was kind of absurd in March. And I'm not blaming because sometimes injuries just happen. Yeah. But, like, there's a part of me that's like, why were they pushing that hard? You know,
I think because they were feeling themselves, don't you think? Yeah. I mean,
that's exactly what it was.
It was like because there was a rhythm. It felt good to play. It was like, hey, we got a rhythm. Let's not lose this rhythm.
That's exactly what it was.
And it's always tough, man. I mean, Denver, I really do think so much of the NBA comes down to the schedule. I mean, the Hawks had that 9-game win streak that actually extended to like an 11-game win streak for a while. But you're like, man, they won 9 in a row, and you go check it, and you're like, all right, well, they've been at home against bad teams. It just there's so much of this in the NBA, and unfortunately for the Lakers, I think you're right. Right when they started feeling themselves was a part where their schedule pushed them, and they probably should have had the discipline to say, let's just make sure we're safe. By the way, Aaron Gordon was on a minute restriction last night, plays 40 minutes. Like, that was also dumb. And it's entirely possible that we analyze this game completely differently a week from now if Aaron Gordon ends up being hurt, and you're like, well, was it worth the vibes of beating the Spurs that one game at the end of the year to sacrifice? I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But the Lakers, to me, I do worry about them now. I don't think they're gonna fall in the standings, though. That's the one thing I'll say. It's possible Denver beats them. There's just not that many games to go. Denver also needs to rest, and so we'll see how it plays out. But either way, it doesn't matter. I think they're now losing in the first round. And even if those guys come back, I just know what it's like. You might have a feel-good game 1, maybe a game 2. But coming back from those injuries and expecting them to stay healthy and be able to give 100%, I just don't see it.
Denver's got a gun for the 3, right? Like, you got to want San Antonio in round 2.
Denver is so banged up right now that I'm telling you, this is why I'm not fully buying into them yet. I think Denver this year is as good as any team in the league. Peyton Watson is dealing with a hamstring injury that he's injured twice. Once came back for 4 games and is hurt. Aaron Gordon has a calf and hamstring injury that he's not only injured multiple times this year, but 2 years in a row he hasn't been able to go 16 consecutive games. So for me, I just look at it and say, I think Denver's great, but is it realistic to think that the output Aaron Gordon had in that game, as great as it was, he can do that 20 more times? It's unfortunate. I hate saying it. If he can, I think Denver's going to be right there with anybody, and I would love their chances, but I worry we're going to have a repeat of last year where we see at a great AG And at one point it's like, he's out. So we'll see what happens. The last one we have here, and this we can credit the podfather Bill Simmons for coming up with this topic and it going viral, but best player in the world, or the best player to never be best player in the world. He brought this up and it was controversial, I think, because, everybody has a different opinion for who was the best player in the world at any given time. But there is an interesting list, and Luka was the guy that spurred this, that Wemby's ascension is happening so quick, and Yoke's been at the top, Shea's over here now, that Luka just might never be the undisputed best player in the league at any point, but yet might still finish as a top 15 player of all time. It's an interesting concept. First of all, with Luka, do you think it applies? Is it fair to look at that and wonder if he'll ever be undisputed best in the world?
Well, so first of all, the framing of undisputed is really complicated because I texted you about this earlier. In my lifetime, the only players that I can think of, so let's just say that my time being aware of basketball, so let's go from like basically the year 2000 on, okay? Because I was
such a
9 years old at that point.
Such a little kid.
There's 3 guys that I can think of that were like actually at any given point in time, like everyone
Undisputed.
thought this dude was the best. And it was like Shaq in the early 2000s because he just absolutely annihilated everyone.
Yeah.
And then, but like even after that, it's like Kobe, Duncan. There was a lot of debate between those 2 guys. Like
it was disputed.
It was Kobe.
I just think it was disputed.
Yeah, exactly. It was disputed. And then, but then like,
people forget LeBron, even Tracy McGrady had like a moment there. I can't remember if it was 03 or something where it was like, well, hey man, maybe it's McGrady. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and like by the time Kobe even started to go on his runs, it was like, that was when LeBron had back-to-back MVPs and he was getting all of his buzz. But there was some time in the 2010s where it was undisputed LeBron, definitely 2012, 2013, probably again around like 2017, 2018. But like the only people that there was at least a year or 2 in that stretch where the only people who didn't think it was LeBron was people who hated him. Like anybody who was being objective was like, it's LeBron. And then I'd say the same thing about Jokic, like circa 2023, 24, basically before this recent rise of Shea and Wemby, essentially before this season. Like the only people who didn't think it was Jokic was people who just didn't like Jokic. And you're always going to find bad actors that are going to say something like that. But every other stretch, it has been disputed. Like for the record, like you could argue KD in 2019, but like you could also argue Kawhi.
Well, I think you could even with Giannis, right? You could say 2020, was there like a little window in there? But I think when we talk about undisputed, it's almost more like you have to wear the crown undisputed for a couple years. And I'm not saying there's any technical thing to this, but Giannis is a guy that I think had a case for 1, maybe 2 years where it's like, hey, I think it might be him or whatever. But it's close enough of a window that I'm like, I don't know if that counts. LeBron, it was a decade. Shaq, it was a long run. Jordan, obviously, it was a decade. So that's kind of what we're accustomed to, but there are these little pockets where it gets interesting. And Kobe falls into one of these pockets where it's like, hey, he had a 2, maybe 3 year run where you could say, I think it's him, but LeBron's here, Duncan's doing this.
The thing is that's different though, is like you can really argue Kobe in like that 2009, 2010 stretch. Like to me, the one guy that I think I would pick to lead my team for a playoff run in those years was Kobe. And I think it kind of bared out in the results. But like, and you can't, like, I think you can really argue Steph in 2022. Like that was a year that I think he has a great argument. You can argue Giannis in 2021 or KD in 2021 or Kawhi in 2019 or even like I'd even argue Shea now. Like you can't, like I think it's no longer consensus now the way that it was a year ago. The point is like I don't think Luka has ever had a case yet. I think if you said, oh, Luka was the best player in 2026, I think most people would disagree with you. Same thing goes for previous seasons. And Wemby's rising and Shea is rising. And like, I think the scary thing with Luka is he's going to fall into a group where like, he's even below that group of like Steph, KD, Kawhi, Giannis, where like you can argue them, but it was never consensus. I don't think he ever will have a season where he's like got a substantial group of people that aren't his fans that think he's the best player in the world.
Here's where I land on all of this, though, because it's a fun conversation, but here's where I land on it. And this might sound controversial. I think there's less often than we give it credit for a clear best player in the world. I think we feel like that is true more often than not. And part of this is just because we like counting stats, but even things like Steph has inverted something to us. LeBron versus Kobe was an interesting one because LeBron did everything. And when you watched him in like 2009, you'd be like, well, LeBron rebounds and assists and does this, and the systems around him, and he creates and he dominates because of this. And Kobe scored, but he scored. And then you get to the playoffs and you're like, yes, but this is really valuable when you just can have a guy that can score every time and, creates these mismatches. And in the clutch, you just go to him. So I think that there's this idea of like value is you do the most things most efficiently, most effectively like this. And the longer I watch, the more I think those things are mostly true, but not completely true. And we don't always have a good sense of value. And on top of that, Jordan kind of brainwashed all of us by winning an entire decade. So we're like, yes, it's the guy wins. But the truth is it still takes a team. It still takes this. And we're living in an era right now where there are a lot of good players. If Wemby becomes the next guy who owns a decade of the NBA, it would fit the pattern historically. But I still think even with Jokic's dominance, to me, he has been the best player in the world for the last 5 years. But it's not like he's that far removed from Luka. And they're still in the same ballpark. And maybe it's just when we get away from history, we feel like it's like Jordan and everybody else. Or maybe it's just this era where I go Jokic and a lot of guys that are like right on his heels. But I just don't believe in the best player in the world being as overwhelming or decisive as I think most people do.
I think you're absolutely correct on this. Like even when I look at the LeBron phase, like I do think LeBron was like far and away the best during that like 2012 to 2015-ish window stretch. But
the only reason I'll disagree with you,
I think Steph and KD were hot on his heels in 2017, 2018. I think Kawhi was hot on his heels. I think LeBron was the best player in the world in 2020, but I think Giannis and Kawhi and KD and all them were like right there. I think it was close. Like I think it's a testament to just how talented the league is. To your point, like to say Jokic is the best player in the world now in a league that has this Wemby, this Shea, this Luka, the league is insanely talented. It's just we're talking about all-time greats.
I also wonder with Jokic, and this will be my final point, we got to move on, but my final thing with Jokic is LeBron, I also watched almost every game of his entire career for the first 15 years. There are people that argue he was best in 2009 because his advanced numbers were there. 2013 because his efficiency was way up there. Even 2016. I always said in 2018, LeBron could no longer consistently play at the level that he had consistently in 2013. Like every night he could just go in fifth gear. But when he had to, his games felt even greater. So it was one out of every 5 games was up there. But when he had to, he could do it. And I wonder.
I don't know. That playoff run was pretty amazing every night.
In 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I mean.
But you are correct that he was mailing in regular season games, which he was not doing in 2000.
And he could even mail in a quarter here or there if he needed against a team they had a comfortable lead in or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas he didn't need to do that in 2013. He had an endless reserve of energy and whatever. And I wonder if Jokic is kind of entering this phase right now where his ceiling is actually higher. And last night felt like it. Like, you know what? He still is great or greater than ever before. But we don't get to see that Jokic 70 times a year. We only get to see it maybe 15 times a year now. And then when the playoffs come around, it'll be there every night.
Before we get out of here, I do want to rectify one thing. I do think Luka had at least some case in 2024 to be the best player in the world.
The championship year? The finals
year? The year they lost to Boston.
Yep, I agree.
So for the record, I would have probably still taken Jokic, but I just want to rectify that because to say that Luka never had a claim at all, I think is wrong. I think he had some claim in 2024.
If we actually went year by year, there's probably fewer years where people are unanimous, even Jordan and this or that. Jordan might have the greatest reach, but even if we're talking about LeBron, to your point, there were some great KD years. Steph Curry, it's hard to get his value, but it was insane for a good portion there. So it probably was even closer than we would like to admit. Couple super chats here, though, that I want to get to. What do we got? Plus 0013 says, Happy Easter, guys. Do you think Adelman has enough pull and integrity to bench Brown if he starts building a brick house in the playoffs? One of the big stories, and we didn't even mention in this, San Antonio, for all their great defense and great defensive players, even they said we're going to play 5-on-4 and leave one guy open. Brown made him pay 5 of 11. I am curious. I don't know if he can do that every night in a playoffs, but I am curious that San Antonio didn't trust their defense fully and still said we'd rather just him take open threes.
Yeah, I thought the looks were of such high quality that I think Christian's going to make enough of them. And I don't think there's I will say that it's nice to have a Tim Hardaway Jr. as an available punch to throw,
Yeah.
or potentially a Peyton Watson if he's healthy, or like, I think it's nice to have options, which they do have. Bruce Brown, but I still think Christian Brown's going to be the guy when they end up in those spots. By the way, I loved the quote. I loved the quote from Adelman after the game when he talked about how it's a game of runs, and it's just something I've always believed in. When you play a great team, you're rarely going to kick their ass.
Yeah.
They're a great team. So they're going to have stretches where they play great basketball and they go on a run and they take a 4, 6, 8 point lead. I loved that quote from Adelman after the game in the locker room where he's like, look, you guys, you just stuck with it and you just handled the up and down nature of a game like that. And I just thought that was great coaching on his part.
We got last one here. JMK42 says, what 2 changes are feasible to better the NBA now? Well, we didn't prep for this question. It would probably be better to be more thoughtful, but I'll give you one, JT, that I thought of the other day. I don't know if it makes it better or not, but I think they should make it. Only players can make challenges. The reason I like this is there's a lot of like coaches, you go to the review. I kind of like players are always wanting review. And I like the idea of like, Draymond Green is 6 for 47 this year on challenges. He has used 47 of the Warriors' 51 challenges this season on himself. I like the idea of players
if they go like this, it's automatic. Like same thing if they call a timeout. Like if a player does this, it is an automatic challenge.
Yeah, only players can challenge. You just have to go like this. And I just love the idea of every teammate being like, dude, again, you're challenging this. Like, you're using our challenge.
Every team's challenge would be gone in the first 4 minutes of every game.
I just love the idea that a player can ruin it for everyone of like, dude, stop. You weren't fouled. You do this every time.
I would shorten the season. That's the obvious one for me. I think you could do it and still keep the TV partners happy and just make it so that I said this with Colin just about an hour ago for a show that's coming out later tonight. Like, we need more games that feel like that Spurs Nuggets game. We need our stars playing. We need them playing hard. We need the games to matter more. I just think shortening the season is just something that has to happen.
Well, hit that outro music for us there, Atticus. I'm still not sold on that one, man. I'm still not sold. I just feel like we're going to get to a world with 60 games and everyone's still tanking, still load managing. Like, it'll evolve to the next phase. I don't know. We'll see.
Basketball players want to play basketball. If their bodies will allow them, I think they will.
Maybe not DeAndre Ayton. We'll find out. Everybody, thanks for joining us. A little Sunday edition of it. It was kind of fun to do a night show here. We're going to be back Wednesday and Friday with Legler, and we'll probably have another show Monday or Tuesday, a mini show or something like that in between, because there's great hoops on the last week of the regular season. The final week of the regular season starts now. We'll be breaking it down. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the like button on the way out.
We all silly like the mayor.